morning to everyone. Dear António Calçada Sá, my dear friend, Board President of the Portuguese Diaspora Council. Dear Abraão Vicente, my friend, dear Minister of Culture and Creative Industries and Minister of the Sea of Cape Verde, representatives of the Municipality of Cascais, ladies and gentlemen. As the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has been highlighting, based on expected levels of global greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere by 2030, and on all countries' climate targets, known as national determined contributions, and despite progress in policies and legislation around climate mitigation, it is likely that global warming will exceed 1.5 degrees Celsius between 2030 and 2035. Current climate policies are projected to increase global warming by 3.2 Celsius degrees by 2100. At this time, we are around 1.1 degrees Celsius of warming, and the IPCC also highlights that exceeding 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels could have irreversible consequences for the climate system. This means that the risks and adverse impacts from climate change will escalate with increasing global warming. To keep within the 1.5 degrees Celsius limits, we need to accelerate our efforts. The fight against climate change will only be possible with the mobilization of all and of all sectors of our societies, because this is a challenge that involves us all. In Portugal, we also need to accelerate our efforts. In 2016, the Prime Minister António Costa announced the commitment to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. In that time, Portugal was the first country to assume this commitment and ambition. In 2019, we delivered the roadmap for carbon neutrality to the United Nations. In June of this year, we presented to the European Commission the revision of our National Energy and Climate Plan to 2030. We were one of the 5 countries that did it. Our plan contains ambitious goals, especially the renewable-based electricity production targets. We anticipate for 2026 to have 80% of our electricity production based on renewables, and by 2030 to achieve 85%. It also underlined the instrumental importance of the plan to revise the national determined contributions and the anticipation of the carbon neutrality for 2045, like we have on our climate law, and it was announced in Sharm el-Sheikh by the Prime Minister on COP27. Among the national objectives listed, the decarbonization of the national economy in all sectors of activity stands out. Measures are planned for energy, industry, residential and service buildings, mobility, agriculture and forestry, wastewater and waste. The focus on strengthening renewable energies will be very significant, promoting the electrification and diversification of energy sources, including the production and consumption of renewable gases such as green hydrogen and biomethane. By 2030, we intend to double the installed capacity of producing electricity from renewable sources, accelerating decarbonization and responding to new industrial investments planned for our country, generating green jobs and national added value. For this reason, we also revised the national hydrogen strategy, more than doubling the expected capacity of electrolyzers by 2030, from 2.5 to 5.5 gigawatts, thus allowing decarbonization the industry on the part that is not electrified, attracting also new industries to produce hydrogen derivatives. We also want to export this renewable gas to the European Union, thus contributing to the security of supply in Europe and also learning with the crisis that we had last year. In order to respond to the increased demand for green electricity, we reinforced our commitment to solar photovoltaic production, including decentralized production where renewable energy communities are crucial. The centralized production foreseen in the National Energy Plan revision does not exceed more than 0.5% of the national territory and is followed by compensation measures and energy sharing with communities. To achieve the proposed objectives, we will approve our means and tools, strengthening the licensing entities and defining preferential areas for renewable installation, the so-called go-to areas. On the other hand, it is our objective to create a green way for licensing of projects with high maturity and to improve the framework applicable to collective self-consumption and renewable energy communities. As for offshore wind production, we reaffirm our commitment to launch until 2030 auctions corresponding to a 10 gigawatt capacity, thus reinforcing the stability of our electoral system and attracting the value chain of offshore technologies to our community. The first auction will take place this year, allowing at least 2 gigawatts to be installed by 2030, which we consider a conservative objective, but in line with our national plan. Installed onshore wind capacity will also be reinforced, improving the framework for the current parks, with the latest technology, with greater capacity and therefore greater production. Ladies and gentlemen, our ambition, like climate change, goes beyond our territory. We are, therefore, advocates of partnerships with other geographies, especially when it comes to a sustainable, fair, and inclusive energy transition, like the one between the European Union and Africa. Because Africa has a strong potential to contribute to this energy transition, and also the Portuguese-speaking countries have an important role on that contribution. Portugal has been working with Portuguese-speaking countries, but not only, as privileged partners of Portuguese cooperation. I'd like to remember, on this regard, my recent visits to Angola and Cape Verde, where I was with Abraão Vicente, where we had the opportunity to verify in loco the importance of the support giving to the projects. Thus, and through the Portuguese Environment Fund allocations to international cooperation, we contribute to support structuring projects in the fields of energy, but also climate transitions and climate adaptation. Projects that have a strong engagement of the local communities and their representative organizations, and that have been giving great importance to institutional capacity building at all levels, like I saw specifically in Cape Verde. This is a clear way to better respond to the challenges resulting from climate change many of which are common to Portugal and to many other countries. I think no better example on innovation on international finance mechanism for climate change than the one that Portugal and Cape Verde gave the world last June, with the signature by the prime ministers of both countries of an unprecedented bilateral agreement. It will allow the conversion of part of the public debt of Cape Verde to Portugal in investment for the Climate and Environmental Fund that Cape Verde will create until the end of this year. In other words, the payment that Cape Verde would make until 2025 of the debt to Portugal will be converted into financing the Climate and Environmental Fund of Cape Verde. It is expected that this operation will be evaluated in 2025. If positive, and I'm sure that it will be positive because we will work together in all the projects that we need to implement, there's an opportunity for reaching 140 million euros of debt. As Prime Minister António Costa stated at the time of signing in Lisbon, this agreement is the concrete translation of something that everyone is aware of. Only together can we face the global challenge of climate change. The increase by 25% of the funds allocated to the international cooperation of Portugal in the climate action that was announced by the Prime Minister in COP27 and the partnerships that we have been developing since last year with international financial institutions is also another way of showing the importance that Portugal gives to environmental cooperation. We have been also working with other African countries that are our neighbors and that have strong potential, like Morocco, that we are studying together the opportunities for new electrical integration. Ladies and gentlemen, we are driven by the ambition to do more and to do better. The ambition and desire to contribute to build a fair society, resilient to the impact of climate change, driven by renewable energies, and which efficiently, circularly, and sustainably manage of all our resources. And the multilateral dialogue is essential to achieve this goal and to answer the global challenge we face. Thank you very much for your attention.